The galaxy had always been under the rule of a single great power, the Empire. Its fleets were enormous and its control stretched across countless star systems. From the inner worlds to the distant frontiers, everyone knew the Empire was untouchable. They had weapons that could destroy entire planets, ships that could move faster than light, and armies that had crushed rebellions without mercy. People had learned long ago not to question the Empire's power. They assumed nothing could challenge it. Then the first strange reports appeared. At first no one took them seriously. Traders, transport pilots, and a few isolated military outposts began sending messages about human ships appearing where they shouldn't be. The ships were enormous, far larger than any human craft the Empire had ever catalogued. They moved with perfect coordination, cutting across sectors without warning and vanishing before reinforcements could arrive. At first, the reports were dismissed as exaggerations or faulty instruments. After all, humans were considered weak, simple, and scattered. They were not supposed to have the ability to build such vessels, let alone command them. But the sightings continued. In the outer sectors, entire fleets of humans appeared seemingly out of nowhere. These fleets weren't just ships, they were carefully organized, armed, and capable of devastating attacks. One system after another reported sudden strikes, communication satellites destroyed, supply convoys intercepted, and planetary defenses bypassed entirely. The humans were precise, deliberate, and completely unlike anything the Empire had faced before. It became clear that this was not the work of rogue civilians or pirates. Something far greater was unfolding. Empire commanders tried to investigate, sending scouts and spy ships to follow the human fleets. Every mission failed. The scouts would report contact for a few hours, then disappear. Sometimes the Empire would recover fragments of data, but the humans left no traces of their supply chains or home bases. It was as if the fleets were appearing from empty space itself. Even the most advanced sensors failed to detect their origin. The Empire's generals began to whisper among themselves, questioning everything they knew about human capabilities. Some feared that perhaps humanity had found new technologies long before the Empire had expected. Others argued it was impossible. How could humans, so small in number and so scattered across the galaxy, suddenly appear with such power? Meanwhile, on the frontier worlds, ordinary people witnessed the human ships firsthand. Farmers, miners, and traders saw the enormous hulls of the vessels moving silently through space, their lights cutting through the darkness like stars falling in formation. They were terrified at first, not understanding who these humans were or what they wanted. But the humans never attacked civilians. They focused only on the Empire's military targets. Supply depots were destroyed, patrol fleets were shattered, but ordinary settlements were left untouched. Slowly, fear among the ordinary population shifted to curiosity. People began to wonder who these humans were. Where did they come from? How could they do what they were doing? Within the Empire, panic began to spread. The leadership had always believed it was unbeatable. They had assumed that humans were too primitive, too divided to ever pose a serious threat. But here they were, attacking key military positions across multiple sectors, always appearing when and where the Empire least expected them. The generals argued over strategies. Some wanted to launch a full-scale offensive to find the humans' base, but no one knew where to look. Others suggested abandoning some sectors entirely, hoping to draw the humans into a trap. Yet every plan seemed to fail before it even began. The human fleets were not reckless. Every move was calculated, every strike precise. The Empire began to realize that these humans had studied them, understood their tactics, and anticipated every action. No Empire fleet had ever been this vulnerable. Battles that the Empire assumed would be victories turned into disasters. Entire squadrons vanished in hours. Commanders who had served for decades found themselves questioning their experience. For the first time in generations, the Empire faced a threat it could not predict, a threat that seemed invisible until it struck. Across the galaxy, other civilizations began to notice. Allied species, minor powers, and neutral colonies observed the human fleets and whispered among themselves. Some were afraid, some were in awe. The humans were unlike any known civilization, organized, disciplined, and utterly fearless. Yet even with such power, they did not plunder or enslave. They attacked only the Empire and nothing more. Slowly, stories spread from sector to sector, carried by traders and travelers. People began to call them the Invisible Fleet, a force that could not be traced, that appeared from nowhere, and that fought only for a purpose no one yet understood. For the Empire, every day brought new frustration. Plans to catch the humans failed repeatedly. Scouts were lost, supply lines were cut. Fleets assembled to meet the humans often found themselves ambushed. And through it all, the human origin remained a complete mystery. Where did they come from? How did they build such enormous fleets without anyone noticing? How had they learned the Empire's tactics so well? Questions multiplied and no one had answers. Even among ordinary citizens of the Empire, anxiety grew. The Empire had long seemed untouchable, but now there were stories of human fleets appearing in sectors considered secure, far from any known human colonies. Panic spread quietly among the population. Traders became nervous about traveling to outer worlds. Officials worried about their positions, fearing they would be blamed for failures. People whispered in secret about the humans, calling them ghosts of the stars, and no one knew what would happen next. Yet for the humans themselves, there was no panic. They moved with purpose, striking where necessary and avoiding unnecessary conflict. They did not seek glory, nor did they gloat over their victories. Their goal remained unclear to outsiders, but to them it was simple: dismantle the Empire one step at a time while remaining hidden. Their discipline, patience, and foresight were unmatched. They had prepared for this moment for generations in secret, far from anyone's eyes. As the first part of this story ends, the galaxy stands on the edge of change. The Empire, once unchallenged, faces a new reality. Humans are not what they seemed. They are powerful, intelligent, and invisible until they choose to appear. No one knows where they came from, how long they have been preparing, or what they will do next. The seeds of fear, curiosity, and awe are planted across countless star systems. And as the Empire begins to feel the first real cracks in its foundation, a quiet truth lingers in the minds of everyone who has seen the human fleet. The future of the galaxy is no longer in the hands of the Empire. Something entirely new has arrived, and no one can predict where it will strike next. The human fleets continued to appear where no one expected them. It was no longer a question of whether they existed. The galaxy had proof. Star systems had been attacked, military fleets destroyed, and entire supply lines cut off. The Empire could no longer ignore the humans, yet they still had no idea where these fleets came from. Every attempt to trace their origin ended in failure. Scouts and spy ships sent to follow them returned with fragments of data at best or nothing at all. The humans were ghosts of the galaxy, moving as if space itself belonged to them. Frontier worlds began sharing stories of the human fleet's uncanny timing. A small colony might be under the threat of an Empire patrol, and just as the patrol was about to strike, the humans would appear. Their ships moved with incredible speed and precision. Entire fleets that had taken months to assemble were neutralized within hours. It was not luck, it was planning, intelligence, and an understanding of the Empire that no one could explain. Commanders who survived these encounters reported that the humans seemed to know their every move before they made it. No one understood how this was possible, and fear began to spread even among the most confident military officers. The human strategy was unlike anything the Empire had seen. They didn't just attack randomly. They chose targets that would cripple the Empire the most. Supply stations were destroyed to cut off reinforcements. Communication hubs were disabled to slow down response times, and fleets were drawn into traps where the humans had already prepared ambushes. Every strike seemed perfectly calculated. Empire officials began to realize that they were facing not just superior firepower, but intelligence, foresight, and patience. Unlike many enemies the Empire had faced before, humans did not rush or act recklessly. They struck and withdrew, leaving only devastation behind. Even ordinary citizens began to notice. Traders traveling between systems would hear of human ships arriving unexpectedly and taking down Empire forces with ease. Farmers on outer planets reported seeing massive human vessels floating silently in orbit, lights blinking in patterns no one could understand, and yet the humans never attacked civilians. Their focus was always the Empire. There was a strange honor in their actions, a kind of discipline that made them unlike any other force the galaxy had known. People began to tell stories in secret, speaking of humans as a mysterious force that could not be stopped, a force that seemed to be everywhere and nowhere at once. Within the Empire, panic spread quietly at first, then openly. Leaders who had long believed in their invincibility began to question their own plans. Generals argued over strategies. Some wanted to search every known human colony, hoping to find the fleet's origin. Others suggested abandoning vulnerable sectors entirely. consolidating forces to mount a defensive stronghold. Yet no matter what they tried, the humans seemed to anticipate their moves. Each plan the Empire thought would work ended in failure. Entire fleets were lost, not because of reckless attacks, but because the humans outsmarted them at every turn. The humans' technology was another mystery. Their ships were massive, far beyond anything the Empire had catalogued for humans. They had weapons that could strike with deadly precision from extreme distances, shields that seemed impervious to the Empire's best firepower, and engines that allowed them to appear in a system before anyone could react. Yet even with all this, the humans did not use their power recklessly. They struck only where necessary and never lingered. Their presence was always temporary, their attacks deliberate and their retreats calculated. Ordinary people began to admire this mysterious force even as they feared it. There was a strange sense of respect in seeing humans act with such intelligence and restraint. The Empire's leaders tried everything. They sent spies disguised as traders, diplomats, and even low-ranking officers into sectors where humans had been sighted. They intercepted communications and scanned for hidden colonies. But every effort failed. Sometimes they found wreckage from previous battles, but nothing that pointed to a home base or supply line. It was as if the human fleet simply appeared from nothing and disappeared just as quickly. Frustration and fear grew in equal measure. No Empire officer wanted to admit it, but a quiet understanding began to spread. The humans were not just another enemy. They were something completely new, something the Empire had never encountered before. Stories of the humans began to spread beyond the military. Traders, scientists, and even ordinary travelers began to talk about them. They were called ghost ships in whispered conversations, or the invisible fleet. People described the humans as disciplined, fearless, and unstoppable. Their ships were enormous, their tactics precise, and their movements almost impossible to predict. Yet no one knew where they came from. Children on distant colonies would hear tales of human ships in bedtime stories, and even adults would find themselves looking at the stars and wondering when or where they might appear next. The mystery added to their power. While the Empire scrambled to respond, the humans continued to strike at critical points. Each victory was quiet, efficient, and devastating. Key supply lines were cut, patrol fleets were destroyed, and communication networks were left in ruins. Yet the humans never sought glory. They never left survivors to spread fear unnecessarily. Every attack was focused, every withdrawal careful. It became clear to the galaxy that humans were patient, calculating, and entirely dedicated to their purpose. Unlike other civilizations, they did not crave conquest or power beyond necessity. They moved like shadows, leaving only the results of their actions behind. The outer colonies began to change in response to these events. People were cautious but also intrigued. Farmers would watch the skies at night, hoping to catch a glimpse of the human fleet. Traders would plan their routes around recent attacks, careful not to attract the attention of either the humans or the Empire. Even scientists speculated about human capabilities, trying to understand how a civilization that had seemed so ordinary could suddenly wield such extraordinary power. The humans were no longer just a threat. They were a mystery that demanded attention, curiosity, and respect. As time passed, the Empire's fear grew into something deeper: confusion. They had always believed that control of the galaxy was absolute, that humans could never be a threat to their power. Yet here they were, being outmaneuvered at every turn. Entire fleets disappeared, systems fell, and no one could predict where the humans would strike next. The Empire's officers began to wonder if they had ever truly understood humans at all. Perhaps humans had been underestimated for centuries, their true potential hidden until this very moment. And still, the humans remained invisible. No one knew where they came from. No one knew how many there were, and no one could predict when they would appear again. Their presence was felt everywhere and nowhere at once, like a silent storm moving through the galaxy. Ordinary people watched in awe and fear. Military officers watched in desperation, and the Empire itself began to realize a truth that it had long refused to accept. Humans were no longer the underpowered species they had once thought. They were a force that could not be contained, a civilization that had waited for the right moment to reveal its strength, and a power that might very well change the fate of the entire galaxy. By the end of this period, the humans had achieved something remarkable. They had challenged the mightiest empire in the galaxy without revealing their origin, without suffering defeat, and without losing their discipline. Ordinary citizens and military alike began to understand a new reality. The humans were organized, intelligent, and unstoppable. Their origin remained a mystery, but their power and precision were undeniable. The galaxy had been changed forever, and the Empire was beginning to feel the first real cracks in its foundation. One question remained unanswered, burning in the minds of everyone across countless systems. Where did these humans come from, and how long had they been preparing for this moment? The Empire had never faced anything like this before. Entire fleets had been destroyed, supply lines cut, and planetary defenses shattered, all by human forces that appeared out of nowhere. For decades, the Empire had been the unquestioned ruler of the galaxy. Its fleets, weapons, and strategies were unmatched, and it had crushed rebellion after rebellion with ease. But now all of that experience and confidence seemed useless. Every plan the Empire devised to strike back failed, leaving commanders frustrated and desperate. At first, the Empire tried to rely on sheer numbers. Massive fleets were assembled, with thousands of ships grouped together to overwhelm the humans. Generals believed that if they could just find them, sheer firepower would be enough to crush the mysterious force. Entire sectors were mobilized for this purpose, and convoys were dispatched to lure the humans into confrontation. Yet no matter what they tried, the humans were always one step ahead. They seemed to know exactly where the Empire would strike, and their attacks were precise, targeted, and devastating. Fleets that should have won easily were shattered within hours, leaving nothing but wreckage in the void. The humans' tactics were unlike anything the Empire had seen. They were not reckless or impulsive. They did not rely on overwhelming force or brute strength. Instead, they struck with careful planning, hitting weak points, cutting off supplies, and then disappearing before the Empire could respond. Sometimes a single fleet of humans would appear and destroy an entire outpost. Other times they would appear as a swarm of smaller ships overwhelming multiple sectors simultaneously. And then, as suddenly as they came, they would vanish, leaving no trace of their origin. The Empire's leaders grew increasingly anxious. Their intelligence divisions worked day and night, trying to uncover any clue that might lead to the human fleet. But everything came up empty. Every battle taught the humans something new. The Empire's strategies, which had worked for centuries, failed again and again. Commanders who had long believed themselves untouchable began to doubt their own abilities. The humans anticipated their moves, adapted quickly, and avoided traps. Even the Empire's most skilled officers could not predict where they would strike next. It was as if the humans had studied them for decades, learning every weakness and planning every move with patience and intelligence that no one had expected. Civilian populations began to feel the tension as well. Traders, miners, and colonists on distant worlds could see the pattern forming. They watched as Empire fleets moved to intercept the humans, only to vanish in a cloud of explosions and destruction. Fear spread, but it was accompanied by awe. Ordinary people began to tell stories of the humans' incredible precision, their discipline, and their ability to strike without hesitation or error. Some spoke of humans as ghosts in space, unstoppable forces that moved in perfect synchronization. Even among the Empire's own people, whispers began to circulate that the humans were no longer a simple enemy. They were something beyond comprehension. The Empire tried deception, hoping to trick the humans into revealing themselves. Fake fleets were sent to bait them. False information was transmitted to confuse them, and secret traps were set in remote systems. But nothing worked. Every trick was anticipated, every trap avoided. The humans seemed to operate as a single unit, perfectly coordinated and fully aware of the Empire's every move. It was not just skill. It was discipline, intelligence, and foresight combined into a force that the Empire had never imagined possible. Even the Empire's best scientists and engineers were baffled. They examined the wreckage of destroyed human ships, trying to understand their technology, their weapons, and their shields. They discovered that the humans used designs that were completely unfamiliar, combining speed, firepower, and resilience in ways the Empire had never considered. The more they studied, the more it became clear that the humans had been preparing for this moment for generations. They had waited, hidden, and grown stronger while the Empire assumed they were weak and insignificant. The humans' ability to appear out of nowhere and disappear without leaving a trace caused a psychological impact that no fleet could measure. Empire officers began to hesitate in decision-making. Where once orders were executed quickly and decisively, Now fleets moved cautiously, fearful of the humans' next strike. Even the most confident leaders found themselves questioning their strategies. Fear of the unknown began to undermine the Empire's authority, and a slow realization spread that they were no longer in control. Meanwhile, the humans themselves continued their operations with calm precision. They struck only when necessary, avoided unnecessary conflict, and never attacked civilians. Their focus was always on the Empire's military forces, and they seemed to operate under a strict code. Observers noted that the humans never wasted resources, never overextended, and never revealed more than they had to. Every action was calculated to achieve maximum effect with minimum exposure. To anyone watching, it was clear that the humans were not reckless warriors. They were disciplined strategists, acting with intelligence far beyond what anyone had expected. Stories of human tactics spread quickly across the galaxy. Even the Empire's soldiers, forced to retreat after encounters, shared tales of the humans' incredible timing and precision. Reports described massive human ships coordinating attacks with smaller fleets, striking multiple targets at once, and vanishing before reinforcements could arrive. The humans' ability to outthink the Empire became legendary. People began to realize that this was not a random series of attacks. The humans were executing a carefully planned campaign, one that was designed to weaken the Empire steadily over time. The psychological impact of these battles was immense. The Empire had ruled for centuries through fear, strength, and control. Now it faced an enemy that could not be intimidated, crushed, or predicted. Fear replaced confidence, confusion replaced certainty, and respect replaced disdain. Even ordinary citizens began to doubt the Empire's ability to protect them. Traders hesitated to travel through space. Colonists fortified their settlements, and soldiers questioned whether they could ever succeed against this invisible enemy. Humanity had proven that strength was not measured in numbers or size alone. It was measured in intelligence, planning, and discipline. By the end of this period, the Empire realized that brute force alone would not defeat the humans. They had underestimated them for far too long. Entire fleets had been lost, sectors destabilized, and morale shattered. The humans were no longer an unknown threat. They were a visible, undeniable force that had shown the Empire its first real vulnerability. The question now was not whether the humans could be defeated, but whether the Empire could even survive their strategic brilliance. For ordinary people watching from the sidelines, the humans became more than just warriors. They became symbols of hope, ingenuity, and resilience. In a galaxy dominated by an oppressive empire, the humans represented something new and powerful, a force that could challenge the strongest power in existence, not through sheer size but through intelligence, precision, and careful planning. The mystery of their origin only added to their legend. No one knew where they came from, how many there were, or what their ultimate goal might be. The humans had changed the galaxy, and everyone, from the highest-ranking officer to the simplest colonist, realized that nothing would ever be the same again. As Part 3 comes to a close, the humans had proven themselves unstoppable in battle, unpredictable in strategy, and unmatched in discipline. The Empire had tried to strike back, only to be outmaneuvered at every turn. Fear and awe had spread across the galaxy, and the question of human origin continued to haunt every mind. What made them so powerful? How had they prepared for this moment without anyone noticing? And most importantly, what would happen next? The answers remained hidden, but one thing was certain. The humans were no longer just a threat. They were a force that had rewritten the rules of the galaxy, and the Empire was struggling to comprehend the new reality they faced. The Empire's frustration had turned into desperation. Every fleet they sent to track or attack the human forces ended in disaster. Every plan failed, every maneuver anticipated, every trap avoided. The humans were no longer just a threat. They were a puzzle, one that no one in the Empire could solve. Every officer and strategist in the galaxy was forced to ask the same question: where did the humans come from? For decades, humans had seemed scattered, weak, and insignificant, but now they had grown into a force that the Empire could not predict or contain. The search for their origin became an obsession. Empire intelligence pored over old records, historical documents, and maps of every known human settlement. Every possibility was examined. Was there a secret colony somewhere hidden for centuries? Could there be a system unknown to the Empire, where humans had built their fleets in secret, Military historians combed through accounts of old expeditions looking for clues, and analysts reviewed every sighting and battle report for patterns. Yet despite all these efforts, there was no clear answer. Every lead ended in a dead end. Every clue dissolved into mystery. At the same time, ordinary people across the galaxy began to notice something unusual. Traders who traveled long distances reported seeing human ships move through uncharted regions, places that the Empire had thought completely empty. Colonists in remote sectors witnessed sudden attacks and equally sudden disappearances of the human fleets. There was no sign of bases, supply depots, or staging points. The humans seemed to appear out of nothing and vanish the same way. It was as if they had mastered a part of space itself, moving through it without leaving a trace. People began to whisper that humans were no longer bound by the rules everyone else had to follow. Inside the Empire, fear turned to panic. Leaders argued constantly, blaming each other for failures. Generals who had once been respected for their brilliance were dismissed after losing entire fleets to human attacks. Councils debated abandoning certain sectors, consolidating power, or even suing for peace, but no one knew if peace was possible. The humans had not sought diplomacy or negotiation. They struck with precision and then vanished, leaving the Empire to pick up the pieces. It became clear that the humans had no need for the Empire to cooperate. They had prepared for this conflict in ways the Empire could not even imagine. The more the Empire tried to understand the humans, the more impossible it seemed. Spies were sent disguised as traders, miners, or diplomats. Reconnaissance missions used every possible sensor and scanning device to detect hidden fleets or colonies. Still nothing was found. The humans were always gone before any real data could be gathered. And even when wreckage was analyzed, it provided no clues about where the fleet came from. It was as if the humans had existed outside the knowledge of the galaxy itself. Some officers began to whisper about the possibility that humans were no longer a simple species. They were something entirely different, capable of surviving and thriving in ways the Empire could not comprehend. Meanwhile, the humans continued their campaign with calm efficiency. They attacked only where necessary, focusing on weakening the Empire without causing unnecessary damage. Entire fleets were neutralized, communication networks disrupted, and supply lines destroyed, all without unnecessary risk to civilians or unnecessary exposure of their own positions. Observers noted their discipline, their intelligence, and their unwavering focus. Unlike the Empire, which was now panicked and reactive, the humans acted with purpose, patience, and precision. Every move was calculated, and the results were devastating. As the Empire struggled, rumors began to spread across the galaxy. Some believed the humans came from a hidden planet beyond known space, a place the Empire had never discovered. Others speculated that they had grown in secret, building their technology and training their fleets while the Empire assumed they were weak. Traders and colonists shared stories of human ships appearing in the most unexpected places, defeating fleets far larger than their own, and then disappearing without a trace. These stories inspired awe and fear, and the humans' reputation as an unstoppable force grew. Empire historians searched for references in old records. They dug through archives, searching for signs of lost human colonies, ancient fleets, or forgotten civilizations. Some records hinted at exploratory missions long ago, but nothing concrete was found. No system had been documented as capable of supporting such a massive fleet. Analysts speculated that the humans must have hidden somewhere in deep space, growing their numbers and developing their technology in secret for generations. But even that explanation left gaps. How had they moved through the galaxy without being noticed until now? How had they learned the Empire's tactics so thoroughly? The questions only grew, and the Empire had no answers. Meanwhile, the humans' presence had a profound psychological impact. Empire officers began to hesitate in battle, fearful of ambushes or traps. Fleets moved more cautiously. Supply routes were delayed, and entire campaigns slowed as generals debated strategy. Even those who had once been confident of victory began to doubt themselves. Ordinary people, too, were affected. Traders delayed shipments. Miners worried about attacks, and colonists fortified their settlements. Everywhere the human shadow was felt, even though they appeared only briefly in each sector. The humans' discipline and intelligence became legendary. Unlike other civilizations that relied on brute force, they relied on planning, foresight, and strategy. Every strike was deliberate, every withdrawal measured. They seemed to act according to a code, one that valued efficiency, precision, and purpose above all else. Observers remarked on the humans' calm demeanor, even in the midst of battle. While the Empire panicked, the humans acted with patience and clarity, leaving no room for mistakes. It was this discipline, more than anything else, that made them unstoppable. The Empire began to fear the unknown as much as the humans themselves. They could no longer predict attacks or even anticipate where the humans might appear. Every sector was vulnerable, every fleet at risk. Ordinary citizens felt the tension as well, watching the skies and wondering if the next strike would reach their planet. Traders shared stories of sudden human attacks on distant outposts, while colonists whispered about the invisible fleet. The humans had become more than a military threat. They were a symbol of unpredictability, intelligence, and patience. And still, no one knew their origin. Despite every effort, the Empire could not locate a single human base or hidden colony. The humans had mastered secrecy to a degree that seemed impossible. They struck and vanished, leaving no evidence behind. Observers could only speculate about where they came from or how they had grown so powerful without anyone noticing. Even the most brilliant minds in the Empire were forced to admit that they were facing something beyond comprehension. As Part 4 ends, the Empire was no longer confident. It had begun to lose not just fleets but faith in its ability to maintain control. Ordinary people and soldiers alike recognized a new truth. The humans were not only powerful, they were invisible, intelligent, and prepared in ways that the Empire could not counter. The mystery of their origin loomed larger than ever, and the galaxy was left in a state of anxious anticipation. Everyone knew that the humans' next move would shape the future of the galaxy, but no one, not even the Empire, could predict what it would be or where it would strike next. The Empire's fear had grown into a deep, gnawing panic. Entire fleets had vanished, supply lines were shattered, and key systems that had been secure for centuries now lay in ruins. Every plan the Empire devised to stop the humans had failed, and every attempt to track their origin ended in frustration. No one knew where the humans came from, no one knew how many there were, and no one could predict their next strike. The Empire had always believed itself unstoppable, but now it faced the unthinkable, an enemy it could not outmaneuver, outgun, or even understand. The humans continued their campaign with relentless precision. They did not attack recklessly or seek glory. Instead, every action was calculated, every strike intentional. Supply depots were destroyed, communication lines severed, and military fleets annihilated. But civilian populations remained unharmed. The humans never lingered, never left their forces exposed, and never wasted resources. Their actions were efficient, disciplined, and terrifyingly effective. Ordinary citizens began to notice the pattern. Humans struck where the Empire was weakest, and they struck hard, leaving devastation in their wake, but never more than necessary. The Empire's leaders became desperate. Meetings in their central command halls were tense, with officers arguing over every decision. Some suggested retreating from vulnerable sectors, hoping to consolidate forces and strike back from a stronger position. Others demanded aggressive action, attempting to force the humans into a direct confrontation. Yet no matter what strategy was chosen, the humans anticipated it. Every trap was avoided, every ambush circumvented, every maneuver countered. The Empire was beginning to understand that the humans were not just clever. They were patient, disciplined, and terrifyingly intelligent. For ordinary citizens, the humans became both a source of fear and a symbol of hope. Farmers and miners on distant worlds watched the skies, wondering if the next fleet to appear would be theirs. Traders paused their journeys, wary of being caught in the middle of a sudden battle. And yet there was admiration for the humans' skill and intelligence. Unlike the Empire, which had relied on intimidation and brute force for centuries, the humans relied on planning, strategy, and precision. They had proven that strength was not measured only by numbers or weapons, but by knowledge, patience, and the ability to act decisively. As the humans pressed their campaign forward, entire Empire strongholds began to crumble. Key planets that had been considered secure for centuries fell within hours of human attacks. Fleets that had been amassed over months of preparation were destroyed almost instantly. Communications between sectors failed as human strikes severed the Empire's networks. Panic spread like wildfire among officers and civilians alike. The Empire, once feared across the galaxy, was now retreating, confused and overwhelmed by an enemy it could not see or understand. Even the Empire's best strategists were forced to admit defeat. They had relied on centuries of military doctrine, countless victories, and advanced technology. But against the humans, all of that experience was useless. The humans anticipated every move, adapted instantly, and struck with precision that left no room for error. Entire campaigns failed before they had a chance to succeed. The Empire's confidence, built over generations, was eroding with every strike. Leaders who had once been respected for their brilliance were dismissed or blamed for losses, and even those who survived began to fear for the future of the galaxy. The humans' power was not just military, it was psychological. They created fear without even appearing for long periods. Entire systems trembled at the thought of a human strike, and the Empire's officers began second-guessing every decision. The humans' discipline, efficiency, and intelligence became legendary. Every attack demonstrated careful planning, and every withdrawal showed restraint and patience. They were not reckless warriors. They were precise, unstoppable, and almost impossible to predict. Ordinary people began to tell stories of their battles, speaking in awe of the humans' ability to appear suddenly, strike with devastating effect, and vanish without a trace. Historians and analysts in the Empire tried to make sense of it all. They searched ancient records for signs of lost human colonies, hidden civilizations, or forgotten fleets. They studied every encounter, hoping to find a pattern that could predict the humans' next move. Some records hinted at long-forgotten exploration missions or isolated settlements, but nothing explained how humans could amass such power without being detected. It became clear that the humans had been preparing for this moment for generations, quietly growing in strength while the Empire assumed they were weak and scattered. The Empire's collapse became inevitable. With each new strike, their fleets grew smaller, their resources stretched thin, and their control over the galaxy weakened. Entire sectors were abandoned, leaving colonies to fend for themselves. Communications broke down, supply lines vanished, and once secure planets became vulnerable. Ordinary citizens watched in fear and wonder as the Empire, the mighty ruler of the galaxy, began to crumble under the precision and intelligence of the human fleet. Despite all this destruction, the humans maintained discipline and restraint. They attacked only when necessary, never wasted resources, and never caused unnecessary suffering. Their focus was clear: dismantle the Empire without bringing harm to innocents. Every move was calculated, every fleet coordinated, and every action deliberate. Observers noted the difference between the humans and every other civilization they had encountered. Humans were patient, intelligent, and fearless, a force that could outthink, outmaneuver, and outperform even the greatest powers in the galaxy. As the final campaigns unfolded, the Empire's leaders realized the full extent of the humans' preparation. For generations, humans had grown quietly in hidden systems, building technology, training fleets, and perfecting strategies without anyone noticing. They had studied the Empire's tactics, weaknesses, and strengths. Every battle was anticipated, every maneuver countered, every trap avoided. The humans had prepared for this moment, and now the Empire was paying the price. The collapse of the Empire was complete when key planetary systems, long thought to be unassailable, fell in rapid succession. The human fleet struck with precision, leaving no time for reinforcements, no chance for counterattacks, and no opportunity for retreat. Entire generations of military experience, decades of planning, and centuries of control dissolved in the wake of human strategy. The galaxy watched in awe and disbelief as the Empire, once untouchable, was reduced to fragments. Ordinary citizens across the galaxy felt the shock of change. Traders, miners, and settlers observed the human skill and precision, speaking in hushed tones about their strength. Children heard stories of the invisible fleet in bedtime tales. Adults marveled at the humans' intelligence, patience, and ability to strike with such devastating effect while maintaining discipline and restraint. The humans had proven that power was not only about fleets or weapons, but also about knowledge, preparation, and strategy. By the end of this period, the humans had achieved what no one thought possible. They had dismantled the greatest power in the galaxy without revealing their full strength. Entire systems had fallen, fleets destroyed, and the Empire's authority shattered. The humans' origin remained a mystery, but their intelligence, discipline, and strategic brilliance were undeniable. Ordinary people and former soldiers alike recognized that the humans were no longer just a threat. They were the force that had rewritten the rules of the galaxy. As Part 5 concludes, the Empire had fallen. Its fleets lay in ruins, its systems abandoned, and its leadership scattered. The humans remained disciplined, intelligent, and focused. They had not only defeated a powerful empire, they had done so without unnecessary destruction, without revealing their origins, and without losing control of their forces. The galaxy was left in awe with one question burning in everyone's mind. Who were these humans and where had they come from? The answer would remain a mystery, setting the stage for the final revelation of their origin and the full extent of their hidden strength. The Empire's fear had turned into something worse: hopelessness. Every fleet it sent out was swallowed by silence. Messages stopped midway, supply convoys vanished, and once secure systems now flickered with distress calls that no one answered. The mighty empire, which had ruled the stars for centuries, was now fighting shadows it could not see. Across the galaxy, people whispered about the humans. Some called them ghosts, others angels of vengeance. But one thing was certain: wherever they appeared, the empire lost. The humans didn't fight like anyone else. They didn't rush into battle or waste energy on long wars. They moved with purpose like clockwork. One day, an empire fleet would be stationed near a border world, confident in its numbers. The next day, every ship would be drifting wreckage, the humans already gone. They never stayed long enough to celebrate or threaten. They struck, finished the job, and vanished. Inside the Empire's central command, chaos ruled. High officers shouted over one another in war rooms, arguing about how to stop an enemy that seemed to know every secret. Some believed the humans were using spies. Others thought they had developed new forms of technology that allowed them to see the future. Every theory sounded possible, yet none could explain the precision of the attacks. The Emperor's advisors were losing faith. Each meeting began the same way. Reports of another lost system, another destroyed fleet. Entire sectors that had served as the backbone of the Empire's economy were now isolated and empty. The Empire had always believed that power came from control, but control was exactly what it had lost. Meanwhile, in far-off colonies, ordinary people watched in both fear and admiration. Merchants spoke in hushed tones about human fleets moving silently through the stars. Miners told stories of bright flashes in the night sky, battles that ended before they began. To many, the humans represented justice long delayed. The Empire had ruled through fear for generations, and now that same fear had returned to haunt it. For the soldiers who still served the Empire, the war was a nightmare. Every time they deployed, they expected to die. No matter how much they trained or how advanced their weapons were, the humans were always one step ahead. They struck from unexpected directions, disabling engines, cutting power, and leaving ships adrift. They didn't destroy everything, only what needed to be destroyed. That precision, that restraint, made them even more terrifying. Reports from surviving officers painted the same picture again and again. The humans didn't just fight battles, they designed them. They forced the Empire's fleets into positions where defeat was guaranteed. And when the fighting was over, the humans never gloated, never transmitted threats. They simply disappeared, leaving behind silence and fear. The Empire tried everything: new formations, decoy fleets, hidden bases, but nothing worked. The humans always seemed to know what was coming. It was as if they had read the Empire's playbook before the first shot was fired. The humans' campaign wasn't just military, it was psychological. Every victory they earned carved deeper cracks into the Empire's foundation. Governors began to flee their posts. Supply officers hoarded fuel and resources, preparing for collapse. Even the propaganda networks could no longer hide the truth. The Empire, once proud and untouchable, was being dismantled by a species it had once considered inferior. But what made the humans even more frightening was how controlled they were. They didn't destroy cities or harm civilians. They avoided unnecessary suffering. To the common people, that discipline set them apart from every conqueror in history. Where the Empire had ruled through violence, the humans fought with precision and purpose. Some citizens even began secretly cheering for them. They saw the humans not as invaders but as liberators. Stories spread about how, after defeating an imperial garrison, the humans would restore power to the planet, repair water systems, and then quietly leave. No speeches, no flags, no demands, and just a single message broadcast across the airwaves: "You are free." Inside the Empire, however, those words felt like a curse. Every time they appeared on a world's communication channels, another part of the Empire's strength withered away. The Empire's last remaining admirals gathered in secret to plan one final counterattack. They assembled the largest fleet in known space, thousands of ships, tens of thousands of soldiers. It was meant to be a show of strength, a reminder that the Empire still ruled the stars. But the humans had already anticipated it. Before the fleet could even reach its destination, the humans struck. Not directly, they didn't need to. They hacked communication relays, fed false data, and turned the Empire's own systems against them. Ships fired on allies, believing them to be enemies. Navigation beacons failed, leaving entire divisions lost in deep space. In the confusion, small human squadrons slipped in and dismantled the remaining command vessels one by one. When the smoke cleared, the largest fleet in the galaxy had been reduced to wreckage. That battle marked the end. The Empire's final defense was gone. The remaining colonies, now cut off from the capital, declared independence. Some celebrated, others simply waited in silence, unsure what the future would bring. The humans, however, didn't press their advantage. They didn't demand surrender or parade through the Empire's ruined capital. Instead, they sent a single transmission across every communication channel in the galaxy. The message was short, calm, and powerful. This is what happens when you forget respect. The strong are not meant to rule the weak. They are meant to protect them. Those words echoed in every corner of the galaxy. For some, it was a lesson. For others, a warning. In the weeks that followed, the humans vanished once again. No one knew where they went or how many remained. Entire systems were now free, but the silence they left behind was almost haunting. People began to realize that the humans hadn't fought for territory or power. They had fought for balance, to remind the galaxy that domination has a price. On the ruined worlds of the Empire, survivors found something unexpected. Among the wreckage, they discovered beacons left behind by the humans. Each one carried a simple archive. Not weapons or commands, but knowledge. Instructions on rebuilding infrastructure, managing resources, and governing without oppression. It was as if the humans were giving the galaxy a second chance. Historians tried to piece together where the humans might have come from. Some believed they came from a hidden world beyond the rim of known space. Others thought they had evolved in secret, away from the Empire's influence, preparing for the day they would return. Whatever the truth, one fact was undeniable. They had planned this for generations. They knew the Empire's habits, its arrogance, and its weaknesses. They had studied, learned, and waited. When the time came, they didn't hesitate. They struck with the confidence of those who knew they were right. In the end, the Empire's fall wasn't caused by the size of the human fleet or the power of their weapons. It was caused by the difference in purpose. The Empire fought for control. The humans fought for survival, and survival always wins. Across the galaxy, free worlds began to rebuild. The name human became a symbol of intelligence, courage, and precision. Stories of their battles were told for generations, how they came from nowhere, fought with honor, and left without claiming a single throne. And still, no one truly knew where they came from. Some say they returned to their hidden world, watching silently from afar. Others believed they scattered once again, blending among the stars, waiting for the next time the galaxy would need them. Whatever the truth, one thing was certain: the humans had changed everything. The Empire's fall had taught the galaxy a lesson it would never forget. Power alone was not enough. Without respect, discipline, and intelligence, even the greatest empire could crumble overnight. As the stars shone over the quiet remains of once great cities, people whispered a single thought. Perhaps the humans were never lost. Perhaps they were waiting for the day the galaxy would need them again.